Okay, good morning everybody. I'm Councillor Lee Hunt, Chair of the Planning Committee. Please be assured that we have put appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that this meeting is undertaken in a COVID secure manner. Limited public seating has been made available. However, this meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to attend remotely. The cameras aren't going to home in on individual speakers today. It's not working quite correctly, so there is a wide view of the council chamber, so we can all be seen at the same time. I think you can see that above me. Okay. Please be advised that the public seating area is not in view of the camera. Is it? I can't see. No. All right. Thank you. Can I please ask members to remain seated throughout the duration of the meeting and wear a face covering unless seated? Housekeeping safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, this is for the fire service here today. We do this every time, sir, I can assure you. Please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. I've explained the web streaming. Members of the press are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished and to switch them on when they want to talk. It's always helpful. So we're going to go around the table. There's quite a few people in the room today. So I'll start with the councillors first, if I may. Perhaps Councillor Atwell, being the Vice Chair, you'd like to introduce yourself. Then we'll go on the front and wind our way up through the back, and then we'll come around the outside of the room.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Councillor Chris Atwell, St Thomas Ward, and Vice Chair of the committee.
Councillor Judith Smythe, St Jude Ward.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor George Fielding, Central Southsea Ward.
Councillor John Smith, East Indian Craneswater.
Sorry, Linda, could you pull the mic towards you just a little bit? You didn't come through. Do you want to try again?
Councillor Linda Symes, East Indian Craneswater Ward.
Councillor Terry Norton, Drayton and Farlington Ward.
Councillor Robert New, Cobner Ward.
Thank you. So we'll go with we'll talk about the officer and who else is in the room. And this is so that many people watching know and understand. Oh, sorry, Councillor Stagg, I do beg your pardon.
Councillor Lynn Stagg, Baffins Ward.
And lovely to have you here as always. So we'll go from left to right so people understand how the meeting works and who's doing what.
Good morning, I'm Ian Maguire, Assistant Director for Planning and Economic Growth.
Simon Turner, Planning Officer and Team Leader.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Ben Christian here for the Cosham Fire Station.
Dave Cottrell from Morgan Sindall with the Cosham Fire Station.
Tony Parker, Hampshire Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service.
Lee Sheen, Station Commander for Cosham Fire Station.
I'm Simon Hill, I'm here for 297 Pals Court Road and I represent the owner.
Councillor Benedict Swan for Copner and Anchorage Park Wards, representing residents.
Paul Hayward, the applicant for Dorking Crescent, the last one on the agenda, I believe.
Michael Hogan, I'm here on behalf of the Parade Tea Rooms.
Andrew DeMarco, Principal Active Travel Officer.
Harry Goodchild from Hampshire County Council, supporting Andrew on the rights of way item today.
And I'm Kieran Laven, I'm one of the Council's planning solicitors.
All right, thank you everybody. So before I move to the agenda, just to make sure everybody's got the SMAT that needs one. Yeah. Councillor Norton hasn't got one. Councillor Stagg, are you okay? And Councillor Stagg needs one as well. And you've got your deputations list. Apologies if you haven't. Could you give one to Councillor Swan as well, please? Thank you. All right. So I have an apology from Councillor Gerald Vernon Jackson, the leader of the council who sits on this committee. He is delayed, but he'll be here at 12 o'clock when Councillor Atwell, I understand, will be going off to another meeting. Are there any other apologies that anybody's offering that we've received from anyone? No. All right. Okay. Anybody got any interest they want to declare in the items before us today? None from the members. So we've got the minutes of the previous meeting when I had to leave sort of three-quarters of the way through, and Chris Atwell took over. The minutes aren't necessarily controversial, so I'm going to propose them. If you've read them, yeah, indeed. It probably might be better for Councillor Atwell today because he took over to second them, if that's all right.
Happy to second.
All right. Well, thank you for the offer, Councillor Fielding. We okay with that, guys? Yeah, all right. I'll just sign those up, that's correct. Right, so they're done, and we're going to do the updates on previous applications. Who's doing this?
Thank you, Chairman. So these updates are usually reports of the current appeals. As members will have noticed, we are now providing these as part of the regular weekly list updates and the MIS update. So they come through about once a month. It really depends on how many appeals we've got to write up. So on that basis, I'm actually going to probably remove this item from the standing agenda and obviously only utilise it if there is a specific previous decision which members wish to look at. As members will be aware from the agenda, we do have an update on the parade tea rooms, an item that members asked to come back, so we're actually doing that during the agenda rather than on this specific agenda item. So we've left it on here just so I can tell you that it's coming off from now on.
Right, members okay with that? I actually did find them coming here quite useful, but if they're on the MIS, I read them when they come round. I mean, it's equally as helpful, I think. Okay, good. So that's all right then, Ian. So we're going to move on to the planning applications now. So we're going to go to Compton Road, which is this definitive map modification order, and the legal officer here will give us any direction that we need on this. Okay, who's doing this one again? I've forgotten.
Andy DeMarco is going to take it.
Oh,
Chair.
yes, of course. Go ahead then.
Good morning. The purpose of this report is to seek authority from the committee for the making of a definitive map modification order to record a public footpath between Compton Road and Battenberg Avenue. The recommendations as set out in the report state that authority should be given for making the order to record a public footpath with a width between 1.4 and 2.7 metres shown between points A and points B on the appendices A attached plan. The recommendation is also that authority be delegated to the Director of Regeneration for them to either confirm the definitive map modification order in the event that there are no objections, or pursue confirmation of the definitive map modification before the Secretary of State or Planning Committee in the event that objections are received and not withdrawn, where the Director of Regeneration in his sole discretion believes confirmation should be pursued, or that the report should be brought back to Planning Committee in the event that objections are received and consequently the Director of Regeneration in his sole discretion believes that the order should not be confirmed. As a background to the report, the definitive map and statement are our city's legal record of public rights of way, and back in 2018 an application was submitted to Portsmouth under the Section 53 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act to record a public footpath between Compton Road and Battenberg Avenue. The application that was submitted was supported by user evidence and maps showing the route being claimed. As the authority, we have a duty under Section 53 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981 to keep the definitive map and statement under continuous review, and to modify the map and statement if there is evidence which shows that a right-of-way which subsists is not shown but subsists or reasonably alleged to subsist over land in which the area to which the map relates. Going back to 2020, Portsmouth City Council commissioned Hampshire County Council to investigate the application under the provision of the Local Government Act 1972, and the report and the evidence, criteria and legislation relevant for this determination can be found. Apologies, it says Appendix A, it should be Appendix B. The reason for this recommendation, as set out in the Hampshire report, are, although there is no historic documentary evidence to suggest the route has ever been a public right-of-way, there is sufficient user evidence to suggest that people have been using the route without force, without secrecy and without permission since 1979. The use of the route appears to have been frequent and of considerable volume, and although we have an opposition from the landowner to the application, they do not appear to have taken any steps to restrict the use during the relevant period. For these reasons, the user evidence was sufficient to meet the test carried out under Sections 31 of the Highways Act and under the provisions of common law. There is evidence from users that the route was used by cyclists. However, there is a sign prohibiting the use of cyclists during this route, and this means that there is insufficient evidence to recommend that a bridle way should be recorded, so it's suggested that a public footpath should be recorded instead. I would now take any questions regarding this.
No, you won't. I'll do that. It's all right. Don't worry. Harry, do you want to add anything to it?
Thank you, Chairman. The only thing I would add is obviously there's reference in the report to some evidence from the landowner side of things regarding closures of the route, so closure of the route once a year to prevent rights crystallising into a formal public right. Now, there's no objective evidence of that, it's only anecdotal, and so the reasonably alleged test, which is the prerequisite for an order to be made, has been met in this instance, hence the recommendation to make the order. It may be once advertised that objections are received and further evidence comes to light, but the test to make the order in the first instance, which is what approval is sought for here, is that reasonably alleged test has been met, and we feel that it has been in this case.
All right. And I didn't want to cut you off there, but they do it. It comes up through me and then goes over to you. Members, you've heard the officer's report, so we're going to move to questions now. Is there any questions anyone wants to ask Councillor Stagg?
Thank you. Does anybody know the reason why cycling is not allowed there? When the signs went up, why were they put up? I'm just wondering if it's a safety issue or not.
Mr. DeMarco.
The route in question is quite circuitous. It's quite a narrow path. It's between 1.4 and 1.7 metres wide, and it probably wouldn't lend itself well to being used between both pedestrians and cyclists. It does provide a valid cut through between Compton Road and Battenberg Avenue, and there is an understanding that people want to take the most direct route. But when we're developing routes, we want to make sure that there is sufficient width, and this wouldn't necessarily meet it. But with regards to the signage being placed up there, it's a historic signage, and I can't comment on when it was placed.
Thank you.
Right, I think that's sensible. I mean, we're all aware we've got some pretty difficult circumstances along Hillsea for sure, with people mixing up, cyclists, dogs and walkers, which has resulted in tragic death recently. So the officers are clearly being very careful. Any other questions, members? All right then, well, what do you want to do then? Which recommendation do you wish to follow? Or can we have all of them? Ian?
It's all of the above to move the officer's report, Chair.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Kieran. So those are the recommendations there. Are we all in agreement with the recommendations? Can you please show by raising your hand? That's it, that's agreed then. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming today.
Thank you.
So, on to number 2 in the reports, which is 297 Powers Court Road. So we've got Mr. Hill here, we'll come to him shortly, and Councillor Swan making a deputation. So who's doing this one? Ms Maguire, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just see if we appear on the screen. That's working at least. Thank you. So, members, an application for the change of use of a dwelling house, currently use class C3, single household occupancy, to a dwelling house for use in use class either C3 or C4, a house in multiple occupancy. This is the dwelling house in question. You can see alterations under permitted development are being carried out to it. To that end, I would draw your attention to the SMAT, which does clarify some perhaps slightly unclear wording in paragraph 5.29 to confirm that the works that are being undertaken we are satisfied are permitted development and can be consequently lawfully completed on that basis. The SMAT also highlights an error in the drafting of 5.19, which just to reconfirm that there is considered to be no objection on car parking requirements, and that's not a reason to sustain refusal. This is an application similar to the one that members will have seen before, a change of use of this dwelling house to a HMO, in this case a dual use either HMO or single occupancy dwelling house. The layout is a relatively standard one, utilising that new rear extension to provide a shared living diner space. It actually also has an additional living sitting room in the middle of the ground floor. You can see there on the left-hand ground floor image, and then the one bedroom on the ground floor, 3 on the first floor, 2 on the second floor, utilising the dormer windows and Velux windows being installed. All bedrooms are en suite. This will be one of 3 HMOs within the defined area, as shown on on page 34, between paragraph 5.4 and 5.5. So that consequently works out as well within the 10% threshold for a mixed and balanced community, and all the room sizes as described here exceed the SPD and private sector housing guidance for room size minimums, and on that basis, with no other concerns highlighted by consultees or by the planning officers, we are satisfied that plan permission should be granted in accordance with your standard policies.
Okay, Mr Hill. You've got 6 minutes, sir. Do you want to just press the red button in front of you when you're ready?
Just set myself a timer.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, we're easy here. Don't worry about it.
Right. Firstly, I must explain this application is made by a private couple who are looking to provide quality accommodation for young people. I represent them today. My company does the building work, and we manage the whole process for them. So I'm representing Mr. Burton. I've lived in Portsmouth since my childhood, and I've been educated in the city. I've spent many happy years here watching the city evolve and improve. I'm proud of our city, and I want to see it continue to be an attractive place to live, work and play. I believe HMOs continue to play an important part in this. Personally, I've been involved in HMOs in this city since I was 21 in 2008, having bought my first HMO when working for a letting agency in the city. I went on to complete a surveying degree in property planning and development. I owned a letting agency in central Southsea and on London Road in North End for 7 years. We predominantly specialised in HMOs and enjoyed a fantastic reputation for their management. I'm a member of ALA, the Association of Residential Letting Agents, and several other landlord and letting agency bodies. Indeed, I currently carry out consultancy work for other letting agencies around HMO management. All of our staff members in terms of management are either currently studying or already qualified. We currently employ over 50 local subcontractors for the conversion of our properties. As such, the conversion of this property provides direct benefits to other people working within this city. 62% of working age population in Portsmouth at the moment are, 62% of the Portsmouth population are currently working age according to the statistics I found. And the average age is between 30 and 35. There's been a year-on-year increase in the population for the last 18 years for which data is available. I highlight these points because this is exactly our target market for the HMO tenants. The works we are carrying out, as you've already heard, are carried out under permitted development. That is to say that whether this were a family home or whether an HMO, we do not require planning permission for the works we are undertaking. Indeed, the only thing we require planning permission for is for the occupation to be of the building to be by more than 2 unrelated individuals. Portsmouth is currently one of the most densely populated cities in Europe and enjoys an incredible reputation for its employment opportunities, particularly for young people. Sadly, as you'll be aware, there is an undersupply of properties for the private rental sector, particularly for young people. Compared with other local cities, Portsmouth has a much older stock of properties due to its history. Sadly, although there are currently 4,270 HMOs in the city, many of them are not fit for purpose and they do not facilitate ensuite facilities, which are, particularly due to COVID, significantly more popular these days. Indeed, they're also not big enough to accommodate them should people wish to add these in. In our experience and in our opinion, our development of these high quality and well managed HMOs will overall increase the standard of HMO accommodation within the city and will likely result in the improvement of the low quality HMOs as they struggle to compete with us, or potentially their return to the private rental sector as smaller and very much needed family homes. On a weekly basis, we receive inquiries from tenants who either move up to us, down to us, or into us. Just to explain further, our tenants either come from lower quality HMOs who are looking to increase their standard of living, they come from people who simply cannot afford to live in a one-bedroom property on their own anymore, or they come from people who are moving into our city. We're able to satisfy all of those people's demands with the accommodation we provide. Contrary to popular criticism, local economics determine the rents, and the increase in rents locally further indicates the significant increase in demand for this type of property. We inspect the properties every single week and the communal areas are regularly cleaned. This also enables us to monitor both the behaviour of the tenants and also the amount of rubbish at the property once they're in operation, so that we can arrange for the disposal of this if required. We have a digital contact system with the tenants 24 hours a day, and we use a maintenance system to report any maintenance issues. Our last room let within an hour and we had over 30 disappointed applicants. I say this only to highlight the standard of our rooms and the need for them amongst their target audience. As you will have seen from the photographs that were pulled up by the planning officer, there was space for 2 or 3 cars outside the property. So I know one of the criticisms is around parking, but at the time of day that the council took the photo, there was plenty of space for parking. Indeed, currently only 7% of HMO tenants in the city have a car. We limit our properties to have only 1 car per household, which is significantly fewer than it would be if it were a family home, either with 2 adults driving or with adult children. You'll also notice from the aerial view there were quite a few spaces as well in the next picture. The location for this property has, in our experience, an undersupply of properties for single occupation by young professional. Indeed, this property was for sale for some significant time before being purchased by my client. One of the criticisms of us in the past is that potentially we would outprice other people. This property was £245,000 and a number of properties now in the area are selling for over £300,000 just in a short period of time. So we didn't overpay for this property, we didn't outprice local people. There simply wasn't the demand for this as a family home because of its condition. Many of our tenants are employed in the NHS, at the QA Hospital or St Mary's, or within other local businesses within the city. The benefit for the wider community of this property being an HMO is that with 6 tenants in it, those tenants are often coming from low standard HMOs, which will convert back into family housing potentially, or from 1-bedroom apartments. So what that means is that if there's 6 tenants in this, that's 6 1-bedroom flats that go to couples in the city who urgently need the accommodation. For example, at the moment, the average rent in the city for a 1-bed flat is over £700 a month. If you take into account gas, water, electric, council tax, bills, etc., you're probably looking £1,200 to £1,300, which on a single salary is pretty much unaffordable these days. So our rooms provide a really high quality opportunity for people. We recently had one of the council licensing officers visit our property. He mentioned that within his 16 years within the council, this was the most compliant and the highest specification property that he'd ever viewed. We have never had any examples of antisocial behaviour, and indeed on the last planning committee at which we were successful to get another application through, I did offer Councillor Swan the opportunity to come to one of our HMOs, and I haven't heard from him at all. I'd extend that opportunity to any of the councillors. You're welcome to come and visit our tenants, our neighbours, see the properties, see the standard of accommodation that we provide. Thank you very much for your time and for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr Hill. Councillor Swan, over to you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman and colleagues. As always, I'm here representing the residents of Copner and also myself as a resident of the area. I appreciate Mr Hill's deputation, particularly as I heard about 98% of it just a couple of weeks ago regarding a property he was given deputation on in Queen's Road. Same facts, same information, just slightly amended for today's audience. The application to turn 297 Powers Court Road into an HMO has caused more upset and anger than almost any other HMO application I have seen submitted. I could talk about the massive impact HMOs have on parking, local services and community cohesion, or the complete fallacy that we're sold every time that including bike storage in an application will suddenly and miraculously mean not one resident of the property will own a car. But you know these arguments, they're fact. As far as HMO applications in the south of Copner Ward, it seems to be open season for developers. Week in and week out, I am notified of more and more applications for HMOs in the area south of Stubbington Avenue, and at this point I have to question whether there is a secret plan to tear the community apart, because that is exactly how it seems and exactly how residents feel. Time and time again, residents object to applications, and time again they are rammed through against their wishes, and the community that so many residents cherish becomes a little more distant. One of my main and most serious concerns about the amount of HMOs in Copner Ward, and certainly in the case of this application, is that there are more and more being approved, and all while the register isn't even close to being accurate. There would appear to be a significant number of HMOs not on the register, which really begs the question, how is this information compiled and updated, and how can decisions on granting HMOs be taken when the register is not up to date? This is absolutely fundamental. You simply cannot make a decision on any HMO if you do not know the actual amount of HMOs in the area. The formula doesn't work, and therefore the decision-making process is not fit for purpose. I also have very serious concerns about the Victorian sewer system's ability to cope with properties with many more people living in them than ever originally intended. Just this past week I was made aware of a property in Hilsey that had to deal with the sewage coming up through the floors, meaning the family that lived there have had to move out whilst this horrendous situation is rectified. You probably won't be surprised to learn that this property is next to a HMO housing 8 people. No wonder there are problems. How long until the residents of Powers Court Road are experiencing the same issues? Again, as with other recent applications in the area, residents have been subjected to what can only be described as intimidating behaviour once their objections to the development have been made public. I stand with residents who are tired of coming up against an almost unclimbable wall of our HMO policy, whilst developers seemingly have a VIP door through the wall. We are at a tipping point in our city. More and more families are being priced out of buying homes by unscrupulous developers who pay way over the odds for properties with the intention of converting them into HMOs and make an absolute killing on rent income whilst also depleting the amount of urgently needed family homes. I also find it deeply unsavoury that we are expected to believe that the developers are converting these properties through the kindness of their hearts and because they love Portsmouth. Let's all be honest about the real reason for the huge increase in HMO applications: cold, hard cash. Especially when you take into consideration that in HMO developments, the local authority can ban each rented room, meaning a Band B property converted to an HMO for 6 people can bring in 6 times the council tax than if the property was still a family home. I find that staggering. I appreciate the need for affordable housing, but I also appreciate that there are families that want to move into our wonderful historic seaside city, and these developments are choking off housing for them. We need to be bold and stand with families, whether they live here now or whether they aspire to live here. I mean, who wouldn't want to live in Copner? It's a fantastic community, but for how long? This application must be rejected until we know the true number of HMOs in Copner and the true impact on local utilities. Please reject this application. The residents of our city, as our liege lords, are counting on you to do the right thing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Swan. Mr Maguire, on the register, I mean, I look at it quite frequently. How confident are we that the register is up to date and how much effort is put into it, you know?
Thank you, Chairman. So the register, I'd say, will inevitably have a lot of holes in it. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, which is why for each individual application, additional effort is made to assess, and the image you can see on the screen, the relevant area. which is obviously the 50-metre radius zone around each individual application. So we are 100% confident, as far as anyone can be, of the information that's relevant to this application. Your policy doesn't seek a percentage of HMO mixed and balanced communities within a ward or a region or a neighbourhood. It seeks it in 50-metre radiuses in accordance with your adopted SPD. So that's what we revalidate in each case. And obviously, if we discover new HMOs that aren't on the register or discover HMOs have ceased that use on the register, they can come off and the register can be updated through that purpose. But it's a regularly updated document liaison between the private sector housing team and the planning team. Ensure that's the case. So as soon as new information is available, the register gets updated accordingly. But that said, there's obviously a broader piece of work, as members are aware, looking at what will be licensed within the city, and that will, if additional licensing does go forward, which is a housing matter, not a planning matter, to be absolutely clear, that will of course require additional resourcing and additional information regarding the register, which will provide an even more robust process. But please do not be confused. We have no concerns about the robustness of the relevant evidence, which is the evidence within this 50-metre radius circle, as illustrated paragraph 5.4 of the application.
And before I come to other members, and in this particular case, application, did anybody complain that there were other HMOs in the area or ask for any others to be investigated? Was any other evidence brought about that?
No, all evidence that we have has confirmed that there are just the two HMOs in the relevant area as described, so a 4% mix through this application.
All right, and for anybody watching, we have a policy in this city which is hugely robust around HMOs to maintain mixed and balanced communities, which is what we call the 10% rule. And our city led the way on that. Most other places don't have any control. It's a local control, which we managed to agree with the planning inspector. So if you move above the 10% rule, then you can't get your HMO. Right. Other questions from members? Councillor Smythe.
This is a question directly about this. I appreciate how hard people work to demonstrate that the 50-metre square policy is being adhered to. Maybe I'm being stupid, but I don't see the other HMOs on that particular map. And also, I assume that we're talking about the yellow circle being the property in question, whereas it says on the key that it's the red circle. I wonder if that could be explained. And I don't see the evidence of the other HMOs within that circle.
Certainly, I had exactly the same issue myself when I looked at it. I think
Good,
we need
I'm
to
in good
tidy
company
up our key, certainly. So the yellow triangle on the key is a specific unknown description. What the team have done is they've dropped a yellow dot, perhaps a different colour should have been used, to overlay the red dot so it's more visible to you. So there's a little red dot underneath that yellow dot that is the application site.
Where's
the two HMOs that are in the area, 328 Powers Court Road and 315 Queens Road. Again, the colour coding is not our friend. It's there. That's,
could you point it out with your cursor? Have you got a cursor?
So I can get onto this. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we are.
This will be quite tricky. Apologies, because I can't see. I think that's it there, 328.
Oh, a little house. I can just... But it's not clear, is it?
The other one, and apologies, this is quite hard to spot.
Oh, it's down there.
It's down here, so it's just touching the end of the garden. But you know, if it's in the catchment area, that we include that. So while obviously the actual property is accessed where it is 315 Queens Road, from some distance away, if you walk around by the road, our 50-metre radius rule does pick them up in those cases. So there's one other in this bit of the road, another one actually 2 roads over, but go into that. So this would be 3 out of the 74 properties that fall into this category, i.e. 4%.
Thank you very much. I couldn't distinguish the green house from the green triangle. I think a little bit more care coding would be a good idea in the future. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that suggestion. Any more questions? Councillor Stagg.
Thank you. This is a sort of more of a general question, I suppose. How exactly, it sounds very easy to say, can you get the HMO lists up to date? How exactly do you go about it? Do you have to go door to door and physically count how many people are living in the house and how many separate sort of rooms there are for individuals? Or do you have to rely on people letting you know, residents, for example, saying there are, we think there's an HMO which is not registered?
Through you, Chair. The answer is all of the above. It's a very complicated issue, which is why I've slightly deferred to say the additional licensing will be a key issue, because if you do choose to go ahead with that approach, and that there are absolutely, I must say, supporters and detractors for additional licensing, so I'm not going to make any comment regarding it, but it would inevitably bring into mandatory regulation more properties and thus increase the robustness of our data, because we will be able to capture them through, if you will, reactive responses to licence applications. The alternatives are to utilise available data, and without boring you with the details, as I will be coming back to you in a meeting that the leader has asked for in May on this topic, but the 2021 census data is considering, they haven't confirmed whether they will, but is considering to include a property and HMO usage as one of the variables. As you can imagine, there's hundreds of variables within census data. That was due to be published in May, I'm doing this from memory, apologies, in May 21. They've been delayed till, I believe, later this summer, is the description we're getting from ONS now. So if that comes forward, we'll have really good census data as a new baseline, if you will, for those properties that are single dwelling households and HMO dwelling households. But on top of that, we then use our own records and lists, granting planning permission, investigating planning enforcement, licensing those that are mandatory licences, and every time we do this individual bespoke assessment for individual planning applications, obviously that informs the update to the register as well.
Thank you. So it's very much labour intensive?
Yes.
And do you have enough staff to do this?
Local government has never enough staff to do the work we do, which is why I say we focus on the individual applications and ensure we have that robust individual data so that you can have the confidence in the decisions you make.
Thank you.
Any more questions? So, the questions is over. I'm going to move to comment, and I'm going to move the officer's recommendation. I'm sure some of you, if not all, will have read the, backing up what Mr Hill said earlier on, the Portsmouth Landlords Association statement during the week, where they're recommending to their members, the smaller HMOs, to close down in the face of the competition from larger, better appointed, better regulated properties, and that this is returning those, as I said a couple of meetings back, is that we always have the difficulty arises with the two up, two downs, really and truly, when they've been extended under permitted development, and that's where the issues really do arise for us locally. But anyway, you've seen all the evidence around this one. It's been looked at thoroughly by the officers. We've heard Councillor Swan, we've heard Mr Hill, we've heard the evidence. Any comments to make, members? Councillor Norton.
Yeah, I think I do have some comments on this, actually. I don't buy the issue around the parking during the day there. Most places in the city would have spaces, the odd space here and there if you were to take a photograph during the day. The issue, of course, is in the evening, and particularly around that area, it is almost impossible for residents of Bosham and Funtington and Powerscourt to park their cars, so much in fact that many will take the risk and just park on a corner, making it difficult for cars to get around, but take the risk of being ticketed. Also, with the increasing issues along Copner Road and how busy that is getting, those roads, Bosham, Kensington, become a rat run, certainly during school time, where you have people flying down there, and it's not uncommon for people to become gridlocked and get out and argue and what have you. So I don't buy the fact that additional cars won't take place there, and that there is capacity for that to happen. So I would actually go as far as saying on traffic and transport terms, I would support a view to refuse this application. I guess children, families won't live there, but there's of course schools are rammed at the moment, so we can't really tie it to amenities. But certainly in terms of traffic and highway issues, I think it would be disastrous to have another HMO in an area there.
All right, Mr. McGuire, anything to respond to?
Only thing, just to be clear, if it's not in the report, obviously the parking standards that you've adopted for HMOs and dwellings are effectively the same. So as a larger house, larger home as it's been extended to do, you're unable to sustain a reason for refusal in accordance with your parking standards, as we've clarified in the SMAT.
And I can't see anywhere where highways have raised an objection on those grounds.
The highways comments are summarised within 519, but no, to be absolutely clear, the SMAT is identical. I think we've a bit of a typo in there. We are satisfied and obviously have checked. Obviously, what we have is a 6-bedroom house and is seeking to, which has been created through permitted development. The parking standard for a 6-bedroom house, whether it's in single household occupancy or in HMO occupancy, is the same within your adopted parking standards. So, or if you will, by definition, you don't have a policy reason to withhold plan permission on the grounds of parking.
All right, then, we've had a good look at it. Councillor Norton has moved a refusal, I think, on highways and parking grounds. Is he going to get a seconder for that? So there's no seconders. So I've moved the officer's report. Is there a seconder for the officer's report? Councillor Smythe. So all those in favour of the recommendation, together with all the other conditions, please raise their hands. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm at 7, aren't I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And those against, 1. And abstaining, 1. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Thank you, Councillor Swan. Swiftly on now to the parade tea rooms. So there's a retrospective application for the change of use of part of a building to form a cafe, to include external operations, single-story extensions after removal of existing can be amended scheme. It's coming back to us, isn't it, gents? Simon?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to remind members, at the last committee, the parade tea rooms was granted planning consent for the limited forward extension in the corner of the building there, outside corner, I should say, for the for storage and freezer facility. So arising from some of the objections to that application, members were interested in a couple of issues and asked for a report back. So here it is. First of all, it was concerning deliveries to the site, which are restricted by the ongoing condition, and there had been some complaints last year that deliveries were outside of the permitted hours. That, as the report sets out, has not happened now for some 6 months, or we've had no reports of that, so that particular issue seems to have resolved itself. And the second issue members were interested in was the van parked outside the tea room, a large van used for storage. So the whole point of the application last month was to provide a bit of additional storage and freezer space, and the applicant has said it is their intention to dispose of the van once they have implemented their planning consent granted last month, which they intend to do as soon as they can. So that problem should resolve itself also. In the meantime, the applicant did secure a permit for the parking of that van at that in that parking zone anyway. So from a planning point of view, there is no further action to take on either of those two issues.
All right, members. So the matters were raised by councillors and the public last time were taken seriously, investigated within 3 weeks and brought back to this committee as was requested. The report is there. Does anybody wants to make any comments about it? All right, Councillor Smith.
I think last time Gerald Van Jackson said wanted to add on to the lease something about not parking of vehicles there because he couldn't do it through a traffic and transport matter, so he was asking for that to be done. Is that being carried forward?
I don't think so, but we're quite happy, obviously, to pass that on.
Indeed, and the city's given the van a parking permit, from what I can understand.
But was that not? Did we not say that and agree that last time?
Go on, Simon.
Obviously, it's not for the planning committee to agree on leases. So if that information hasn't been, I believe it has already been passed on to the property team, but we will doubly sure that is the case. Obviously, it will depend if there's any renewal of the lease and so on and so forth, whether there is an ability as landlord to amend what is, I'm sure, a lawfully assigned lease already. But obviously, the comments of the planning committee and the comments of the leader have been noted. And if they haven't already been passed on to property, I believe they have, but I will double check that.
All right, so Mr. Hogan's here. You can see 1.3 in the report. They've said they're going to take it away. Councillor Symes.
Yes, one. I'd like to, is in fact there a signed lease on this building? As I understood, the lease hadn't yet been signed. Is there a sign? Has a lease been
any
signed?
information that might help the members today, so we can get on?
I'm afraid I'm not involved with the property side of things, so I don't know.
Okay. And, you know, as someone who didn't sit last time, just wondered, this property has been used as a cafe for some considerable time. Why the sudden need for extra storage? Their customer base has always been extremely good. There have always been queues outside. They seem to accommodate everyone. I can't understand why after 7.5 years they suddenly need more storage. I find that a bit of an anomaly, but...
Well, I think one of the advantages is that they'll remove what they've been doing in the van into the new
But they didn't have the van for
facility.
7.5 years.
Sure.
The van's only been there since the planning application came in.
All right, I'll bow to your superior knowledge.
That's all right. And does it have landlord's consent? I understand because you're taking a piece of open space, you need landlord's consent. Has landlord's consent been sought?
I would suggest you chase those queries up with Property Services, Councillor.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Is that okay now? Okay, thank you for Councillor Symes. So the report's noted. All right. Thank you. So we're on to, and thank you to the officers for investigating it so quickly. We're on to item 4, which is the parade tea rooms. An application to remove condition 4 of the application to allow the external kitchen door to remain open for ventilation as required. Who's doing this one? Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. So we have the applicant to speak in a moment, but the application is seeking removal of condition 4 to the original planning consent, which required the kitchen door to remain closed at all times. So you've got the location plan of the tea room there opposite, and there is the southern elevation with the kitchen door outlined in red there. You can see the cars on the street, parked on the street in front of the tea rooms, and the houses and flats opposite on the other side of the road. So clearly the applicants would actually like to have the facility to have the kitchen door open in contravention of the existing condition, hence their application to remove that condition. So this concerns, excuse me, noise and odour concerns from local residents. You'll see in the report, Environmental Health, of course, have been consulted and have commented in detail on those two matters. With respect to odours, they make the technical points about the negative pressure you have with an extraction system and the need, therefore, for an air inlet into a space. Opening the door can form part of that air source, effectively, to bring air in through the kitchen and through into the extraction system rather than out of the door. So they seem to be quite happy with that approach, with the door being open. They also note about how gas appliances, cookers, etc. Need to operate safely with a similar sort of draw-through of air. So the things seem to run together there. With respect to noise, you can see the relationship of that door pointing south, whereas the properties are over to the east there. The distance away, 26 metres, provides its own attenuation as noise falls off, and then those properties, the flats or houses opposite, don't have any outdoor amenity space, so it's amenity inside the premises. So the attenuation of the building itself, depending on whether the windows are open or shut, will also provide further noise reduction. So your environmental health officers conclude that they have no objection, essentially, to the removal of this condition. We would, as you can see from the end of the report, maintain the suite of other conditions that would still apply to the premises for its proper running with respect to the air conditioning, extraction, deliveries, refuse, etc. into the future. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hogan, you've got 6 minutes, sir. Thank you for waiting.
Right, thank you very much indeed. My name's Michael Hogan. I'm the father of the owner, Mark Hogan, of the Parade 2 Rooms. Unfortunately, he apologises for not coming today. We are a bit understaffed, and with the school holidays and everything, we're very busy. So his hands are tied, so he's asked me to come here and present his deputation. When the condition was initially put into the plans some 6 years ago, it wasn't envisaged that the business would become as successful that it has. The amount of time that the door opens and shuts is extremely high daily, whether it be for deliveries, putting out rubbish, fetching stock, etc. We have extensive deliveries, fill a commercial size bin and more daily, and have on average 30 plus visits to our fridge. Whilst we note that Mr. Maidment from Planning Services sees no need to remove the condition, we have had several complaints from the council over the door being opened in the past. We do check our CCTV, but it shows the door is being used legitimately and that we are doing nothing wrong. Removal of this condition would prevent a lot of time spent by the council dealing with complaints, as they should, and us having to try and justify why one door has been open for, say, 20 minutes by scouring our CCTV, when we are trying to run a business that employs 40 full-time local people and which attracts a lot of people to the area. We see our business as a great asset to the area. We work extremely hard to ensure that the highest standards are set, which is why we have a 5-star rating. The building itself is maintained to the highest standard, and the area around the building is also kept clean and tidy. We have, however, noted the objections made to this request. We are somewhat perplexed by their comments and feel we have to address these concerns. When the business was constructed, we were aware, as were the council, of the neighbours' concerns over the smell of food. So we went beyond what was required in terms of an extraction system and installed a top quality one with a carbon filter. The filters are replaced every few months and the ducting is cleaned twice a year. The extractor fans are directly above the hot food preparation area, which sucks up all the smells, and we can say with great confidence that there is absolutely no way that any food smells can emanate from the back door being opened during deliveries, etc. As said earlier, we believe we are a great asset for the community and the city in general. We are always looking at ways to improve our efficiency as a business and find it difficult to understand people's need to react negatively in us trying to do that. We appreciate that people have the right to object, but it's difficult to understand why objectors just do not come and see us, as we are very approachable. In fact, we would welcome any visit to our tea rooms by any of yourselves. Thank you for your time.
All right, Mr. Hogan. Members, we're going to move to questions now. Anybody got any questions? Councillor Smith, first of all.
I haven't got any real big issues with this, but does the door swing outwards or inwards?
Outwards.
Okay, doesn't look like there's any more questions. Councillor Symes?
Yes, I believe the conditions were imposed because people had complained about smells. When I was councillor in that ward, I used to get quite a lot of complaints about it. And I can't understand why, if you have an efficient extractor system, the need for the door...
If I may very politely interrupt, if you would be very kind enough to look to toward the chair. We've already discussed between you and Mr. Hogan, Councillor Symes. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's absolutely
I don't
fine.
wish to appear rude, but just need to manage the meeting.
That's okay. Yes, I don't really understand why the door has to be open to allow fresh air in. If the extractor is taking all the heat and the smells out of that kitchen, that surely should be sufficient. Most kitchens with extractors have the doors closed and often have that as a condition of their planning permission for all the reasons we've heard. And I can't believe that isn't the case here. I just don't see a sufficient reason for it to be open.
Right, there you are. Mr. Turner, is that sufficient reason for it to be open?
Basically the Environmental Health Officer hasn't objected to it being open. It may or may not be necessary, but he has not objected to it being open and the removal of the condition.
Yeah. All right, Councillor Symes. Any other questions? So we're going to move to comment, and I'm not going to die in a ditch on this, I'm afraid. It's a door, and I do remember, I mean, I was the same place as you. It was quite a controversial thing back then, but they've traded very successfully, and it's a successful operation and a business that we would want to support as a council, I would hope. And I can't see any evidence here that having the door open or shut, quite frankly, makes much difference. I suspect it'd probably be shut during the winter because it's cold, and perhaps open in the summer. I do know that if one particulate gets out and it goes up your nose, you get the whole shebang of smell. So I'm going to move the officers' recommendations. Anybody else got any alternative views?
I just wanted to say that as Ward Councillor in St Jude, I haven't had any representations on this. I can imagine that there are some people who are troubled by it, but it's quite a long distance compared. We have cafes in the St Jude ward which are much nearer to people, and where I do know there are problems, and people do come to me about this, but they haven't on this. And where there's a door, somebody's going to open it, is my view. And also, sometimes I think the staff in the kitchen must be desperate for a gasp of fresh air, and we must look out for the conditions under which kitchen staff work as well. So.
Indeed, I'm most grateful for the councillors looking after their residents and trying to do the best for them as they see fit. So I've moved the report. Is there a seconder? Councillor Fielding. Right. So we're going to move to the vote then. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show their hands. So that is unanimous. All right. Thank you for coming, Mr. Hogan. So we're on to number 5 then. This is the Invisible 6 Wickham Street, which is an outline application for the construction of a 12-storey building, co-living bed space, etc. Be considered today. Now, this is relating to medical students, which is the first thing. Sorry, have I got the wrong one? Yeah, I'll shut up then. Carry on.
Thank you. I think you're referring to student accommodation for Clock House later in the agenda, Chairman. Thank you. The Invincible Wickham Street, an outline application, but only landscape reserve, so you're pretty much looking at everything within the scheme. Just first of all on the SMAT, to be absolutely clear, as I think we tied ourselves up in not describing the scheme, it is, and let me find the right screen. Yeah, it is a 12-storey building. We've got a ground floor. We've got floors 1 to 10. Then we have on the applicant is labelled Panorama Lounge. 12 stories in total. So we've made that clear in the SMAT. Apologies for the confusion within the report. It's a comprehensive redevelopment filling the full plot of the former Invincibles site on Wickham Street. That's the plot you can hopefully see on the screen there. There's the existing building. I would also draw your attention to the large building with parking structure surrounding it immediately adjacent, which very much sets the maximum scale in this area. But we are going up in scale to the 12 stories. That upper floor, that lounge area, obviously recessed as well. A little comparison there to show how taking a small building in and putting a tall building back, but as you can see from the adjacent buildings, one that we feel is of appropriate scale. Just make sure these things are coming up as I speak, so that's the other side, very much the same thing. Architectural detailing is shown to be of high quality. It's a modern design, obviously some additional details required by planning condition, as would be the norm, but overall we are satisfied this is an appropriate design, both in its detail and in its primary scaling issues for this location. This location is surrounded by heritage assets, so we're not in a conservation area here, but on 3 sides of it almost we've got conservation area and other significant undesignated assets, obviously associated with the Hard and the historic Dockland within the immediate setting. So high quality delivery is essential. But as I say, we are satisfied from a design and heritage point of view that the building is appropriate for its site. To move on to what the building's being used for then, it's 76, get the right, 76 co-living rooms. Co-living is a different form, different typology of housing, and not one that we see much of in Portsmouth, and it's not one that's that common across the country. It's been around for 900 years, probably, in various different forms, and I know the applicant will want to speak to this. Because co-living is not a standard typology, it falls between the stalls of policy, which means you, as the decision-making planning committee, have to very much apply individual judgment, and the policies that you've adopted for the most common type of co-living, HMOs, and the policies you've adopted for flats have to both be considered in the broader context to see how they guide that fundamental question, whether the quality of the living environment created by this co-living is acceptable and meets your test, which is obviously to create those good living environments in accordance with policy PCS 23. We do have to obviously consider, as part of that, the overriding implications of the fact that we don't have a 5-year land supply for housing. We have a significant housing need and shortage within the city, and we're all fully aware, noticing today's inflationary announcing figures, the squeeze on household budgets and the overall affordability crisis that many in the housing sector are dealing with. So this is meeting a housing need in terms of unit numbers, 76 beds, that's single beds, and very much going in a specific point within that cost position around that, lower than flats and potentially higher than HMOs, but obviously for markets to decide. What you can see on the plan is the proposed ground floor of the building. So this is an illustration of some of the communal and shared spaces on the ground floor of the building. You can see the residence gym on there and substantive bike storage, enough for one bike storage at least within the building. It has no parking provision, which obviously is a concern to the Highway Authority, but in this location, obviously almost immediately adjacent to the Hard and the bus interchange that is on the Hard, we are satisfied that is appropriate for such a sustainable location. So significant bike storage for future residents and a range and mix of communal spaces. Ground floor gym, you can see there. If we just look at a typical floor, every floor is different, so typical floor is a bit of a exaggeration. This is floor 5, I think. Let me just make sure that's up. You can see in the top left corner there a shared kitchen, dining, living room space, and you can see surrounding it a number of the units that make up the bed spaces that are those 76 bed spaces within there. The size and distribution of these shared and communal spaces varies floor by floor, and they are all open to all residents. It is a co-living building, 12 floors, 76 residents. Everyone has access to everything other than the individual 76 beds, of course. They are private to those individual residents. Each of those private bed spaces varies different. There's 4 different types depending on the orientation and layout, slightly different sizes, around 18.5, I think, square metres, rising up to around 22.5 square metres. Each has a bedroom space, which obviously is convertible between sleeping and living with a convertible bed, an ensuite bathroom and a kitchenette, which means it contains all of the necessary elements, the basic amenities for people to live, but at around 18-20 square metres, obviously individually much smaller than the 36 square metres we would expect as a national space standards for an individual flat. So if this was a block of 76 flats, you wouldn't be discussing it today. I would have refused it months ago. It's not a block of 76 flats. It's a block of 76 bed spaces with all the basic amenities plus substantial areas of communal space. As I say, we are seeking some further comments on the individual design, and frustratingly there were some extra slides on here that don't appear to have made it through to the presentation, so I apologise for that, and I'll have to do it from memory. I can pull those up if we need to. As I say, individually these flatlets, these rooms, don't meet your space standards for flats. However, those communal spaces are substantial. There's a debate on when you look at the ground floor, so there's a communal space you can see, and I'll try and get this to work. You can see a communal space here on the ground floor by the main entrance. How usable is that space? There's a judgment to be applied, certainly. But if you count up all of these communal spaces and then add that to the individual spaces, every occupant, every one of the 76 occupants of this dwelling would, per head, have a lot more space than the HMO you just approved. But obviously they've been using it in a very different way. Rather than having a single living dining space shared with 5 housemates, they've got a dozen shared communal spaces of different purpose and different utility shared with their community, their 75 building mates within the co-living environment. So it's a very different typology of living than a traditional dwelling house, whether that dwelling house is by single household occupancy or indeed by an HMO occupancy. So whether that's acceptable, whether that's appropriate, is a judgment that clearly members need to apply. I say your policy guidance only gets you so far because it doesn't meet any of your policy guidance because it's not doesn't need to. It falls between those two stalls and consequently the judgment falls to whether co-living is a form of housing that we feel does meet that overall policy requirement that it is a high quality living amenity space and living standard as laid out by policy PCS 23. So there's a design and heritage piece which we're satisfied is an appropriate building and scale for it, but I think the bigger challenge for members to apply your judgment to today is whether co-living as a typology of housing is appropriate and meets that test for the standard of living environment that is the minimum requirement for Portsmouth and indeed for your citizens. Happy to obviously answer any questions.
Well, we've got Mr. Vale here, haven't we? Mr. Vale, sir, the committee will be very interested to see and hear how, you know, the sort of people that use this property, not that we have any control over that, but what your aspirations are for it, sir.
Okay. Good morning, members. Thank you. My name's Tom Vale. I'm a director of the applicant. I think I'd first like to start, if I may, by thanking the planning officers. We've worked for some time with the team and for bringing this forward to the committee. As a developer with two other recent applications in the city, we appreciate the stress and pressure the planning team is under. So we are appreciative of all their support and time we've taken to get here. So what is co-living? Where does it sit in the housing market? What is the difference between co-living and HMO? Why sui generis? And finally, why is it relevant to the city and, we think, an opportunity for Portsmouth? Whilst a new concept in terms of the modern iteration of co-living, while it's new to Portsmouth and indeed Hampshire, it's an established model in other major cities across the UK. However, there is no universal definition of how co-living schemes are interpreted in planning terms. London is leading the way in the UK, outlining the concept and design parameters of what's called large-scale purpose-built shared living in the New London Plan. But in general terms, it is a large-scale purpose-built managed rental block, comprising small private living units with extensive communal facilities under single professional management. The occupier demographic is wide, from 24 to 50, and focused on single professionals and offering short-term lets averaging between 6 and 12 months. It offers an innovative and affordable solution to the traditional housing market, providing what we think is a stepping stone onto the housing ladder for individuals. But co-living is more than a housing product, and its appeal to residents is built on a change in the way people are choosing to live. At a time when mental health is at the forefront, co-living seeks to offer a choice from what is often a lonely alternative. Importantly, and despite the pandemic, the London co-living developments and those in Manchester have witnessed strong demand, evidencing the success of the concept and the choice it offers. Other cities are now adopting this new form of living, including Exeter and Brighton. As an emerging trend, co-living, unlike traditional residential accommodation or HMOs, is distinctly different, centralised around community building, seeking to plug a need and choice gap in the current housing market. It provides services and facilities that fall outside of living accommodation, and whereby the quality, size and scale of shared living complex and the array of services it will offer wholly distinguishes it from a typical HMO or indeed traditional residential accommodation as defined under the Housing Act. Community living is living within a property built for such purpose, with two key facets that encourage the formation of this community within: well-designed space and people-centred management. The space is creatively designed throughout the building to encourage occupiers to use it, while our community managers provide a social programme that underpins this ethos. So rather than the 3 to 5 or more rooms of an HMO, this is a development of 76 units, which comprises the economies of scale for the development to include these shared facilities. The development will have a range of shared facilities, as we've seen: ground floor reception, gym, cycle storage, to large kitchen living rooms, and culminating in a sky lounge on the top floor. The size of the kitchen living rooms enables us to provide extensive kitchen facilities, laundry, and a relaxation area for social interaction. So while the occupants each have their own secure and self-contained unit, they have the choice and availability of shared space throughout the building. And the management of the building is intrinsic to the detailed management plan that will form part of the Section 106 agreement, and as such forever be maintained and adhered to. So co-living does not simply propose a house share, it promises an innovative share way of living distinctly different from other types of residential accommodation. Why Portsmouth? We are a development and investment business based in Hampshire with roots in the city. Our team has first-hand experience of this development type outside of the UK. We decided on Portsmouth as our first UK programme. It's our home city, and we understand the opportunity. A city that has a track record of innovation within the property sector, whether Gunwharf or Port Solent, a university city with a thriving business community and a desire to retain university leavers. We've engaged with the Council over the last couple of years, and together with the private sector housing team and Highways Authority, we've refined how co-living can work in practice in Portsmouth to deliver an alternative housing solution. With the support of the Council's team, and in particular Mark Pembleton, we have taken time to meet with business and review our proposals and understand how it may suit their needs. As an example, we met with Airbus, who in every September have an average of 50 new starters, and throughout the year a variable number of subcontractors ranging from 150 to 300 at any one time, most of whom are new to the city of Portsmouth and require accommodation. For them and others, a co-living development on Wickham Street offers a stepping stone into living in Portsmouth, a location in the heart of the city on top of a major transport hub, and a chance to meet and be part of an immediate community. The reaction from business we have met has been one of wholehearted support, and to substantiate this, we provided 2 letters from 2 of the city's major employers. As has been explained, the application site is located within the Hard, a centralised public transport hub with connections to all parts of the city and surrounding area. The Hard and the surrounding area of Gunwharf Quays has undergone extensive regeneration, and this has created a desirable, lively place to live, work, stay and relax. In terms of car parking impact locally and in respect of residents' parking zones, the building will be registered under a single address, so will only be eligible for 1 car parking permit to be held by the community manager. All future occupants will be informed that no car parking is available to them, which will discourage those who need immediate use of a car. Due to the short-term nature of tenancy, co-living lends itself to being car-free, and we envisage that the accommodation will appeal to those who live and work within the vicinity of Portsmouth or can use the Hard interchange and all public transport connections on their doorstep. There is also a membership provided to all residents to a local car share scheme where you can rent a vehicle by the hour or as your needs require. In summary, the outline application continues the much-needed regeneration of the Hard by providing alternative high-quality accommodation in a highly sustainable and appropriate location. This scheme would be pioneering in bringing the concept of co-living to Portsmouth and Hampshire, delivering an innovative solution to the current housing market, and as such, we would urge you to follow your officer's recommendation and support the proposal. Many thanks.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Members, you heard there some evidence of the sort of target audience. It seems to be short-term lets, professional people, that sort of thing, working in the dockyard and so on, and engineers and such forth. So we're going to go to questions now, and Councillor Smythe.
Thank you. I spent some time in my career innovating different sorts of housing, And this is interesting in that co-housing is quite big, but this isn't co-housing, this is co-living. Co-housing is a cooperative model. The question I've got is about the affordability of this. I can imagine that this would be absolutely ideal for a school leaver, a sixth form college school leaver who was otherwise unable to get the experience that others gain in a university hall of residence. Would they be able to afford that, and would they be able to get benefit to help with the rent, is my question.
I'm not sure that's one the planning officer's going to want to answer, but
it's one
it goes to the heart of the
assist
question about affordability, because I was going to follow up with a question with how do we reconcile this with the need to have a percentage of the homes affordable for people who are in need of housing and who might not be initially able to afford what, for example, BA Systems are willing to pay for a new recruit to come down, or somebody who's got a short-term contract here whose expenses would be paid.
So I can answer part of that second question. Obviously, exactly how much the charge per square metre will be for these units, as I mentioned in the presentation, is a matter of a market delivery. So common sense tells you, obviously, they're not going to be able to charge the same as a one-bed flat. Though obviously, people may choose this typology of housing. The marketing approach is clearly beyond just a bed for the night. They are looking to create something different, and the market will respond accordingly. The planning matter, however, because obviously how much they charge per unit isn't a planning matter, it's a market matter. The planning matter is the fact that this doesn't make a contribution to affordable housing as defined under that definition in the MPPF, because it falls outside and between the stalls of the different uses. This is not a C3 building. If this was a block of 76 flats, we would require a percentage of those flats to be affordable homes as defined by national guidance. It's not, it's something different, and therefore your policy doesn't give you a position to require that. That is not, I think, something that weighs against the scheme, because it is an absence of policy rather than something that's contrary to policy, but certainly it doesn't weigh for the scheme either. An alternative use of that building, if you cut it up differently and did 20, 30 flats, would have provided affordable housing in the traditional sense for Portsmouth, but you'd have lost this cheaper, I won't use the word affordable, this cheaper form of housing in terms of being fitted within household budgets to Portsmouth. So again, there's a degree of individual judgment to that. Policy will only take you so far.
Thank you. I can just follow up, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate that it doesn't fall into our 30% policy. But some of the affordable housing that is produced in Portsmouth isn't covered by that, is developed separately by a housing association and isn't therefore covered directly by the policy. Is there any way in which we can condition some kind of percentage of this development for people who are would be otherwise on the housing waiting list, for example?
A short answer, no. Much longer answer, with apologies. There are a number of different forms of affordable housing, as members are fully aware, all defined by the National Planning Policy framework. The more general and traditional affordable housing that everyone associates, the council house, delivered at a social rented level owned by the council for many years now, also offered by registered social landlord, registered providers in the same way. That social rent is not the only rented model. An affordable rent is another model for that. That's 80% of market value, as indeed is the large suite of low-cost home ownership, to use the current jargon, or shared ownership, shared equity alternatives available to the more traditional affordable housing market. One of the most recent changes, and we're still talking a couple of years ago, was the introduction of private sector rented affordable properties, where if a building is built as a purpose-built building for rented accommodation, you do not need, if you intend to build it and manage it, you do not need to bring in a registered social landlord or the council to operate your affordable housing. You can instead provide the relevant percentage of those private sector rented units in the normal private sector way, but you are capped to 80% of market value. That would be the closest comparator, and if you had a policy justification to say, yes, this should make a direct contribution to affordable housing, then you could, on that basis, require a percentage of these units to be offered at 80% of the cost of the other units, because obviously the market is limited to simply this building, because there is no other comparators, even in our nearest neighbours geographically, albeit it is a growing area. I would say that's if you had a policy basis to do so. To withhold planning permission, well, there is a discussion to have around that. To withhold planning permission, as arguing this was contrary to your adopted policy on affordable housing, would not be sustainable in officer's recommendation under your local plan, because your local plan doesn't envision this. Indeed, nor does the National Planning Policy Framework. It doesn't speak to co-living at all. As the applicant mentioned, some plans, such as London, where this has been a more common, I'll say common, very generously common typology, are starting to tackle those issues. And obviously, it's something that we can look at in the emerging plan as we move forward. But to try and withhold plan permission now, or granted only with a condition arbitrarily imposing affordable housing without a policy basis, would not be sustainable on appeal, I would advise.
I understand that. So are we going to be investigating how we can, in future, in the local plan, accommodate this, and take the example of some London boroughs which must have thought this through in quite a good way, because this does seem a very interesting contribution to our housing market here.
Yes, we acknowledge co-living as a new typology within the Regulation 18 consultation. What that will then move forward to other things such as space standards, affordable housing, parking standards, obviously, is being explored in preparation of the Regulation 19 version of the plan. So that assessment's already in hand.
I'm surprised we are thinking of this as a new typology. It looks exactly like sheltered housing to me, only in a vertical stack. It's not. And the last question, Chair, if I might, is how much communal space actually is there? Is there one of those shared lounges on every floor? Because your plans didn't show that. Is there? If that was, you showed us a plan of the 5th floor, I think, and that had a nice communal lounge in the corner, which looked lovely, but we couldn't tell whether that was replicated on every floor.
Yes, so while we were speaking, I took the opportunity, as I said, there were some more slides. I quickly uploaded those extra slides, so this is what I would have showed you earlier. I must stress this is
helpful.
indicative only, because there has been some tweaks as the application has evolved, but doesn't materially change. The purple and pink areas are areas that are illustrated as being communal for residents. That ground floor's changed a bit. To be honest, a dedicated laundry has been deleted to make way for some more cycle storage, and laundry facilities are now to be incorporated into the individual kitchen and diners. And what you see on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th and 10th floor, the purple rectangles, are all varying sizes, living, dining space. And obviously I gave you the illustration, and I'll give it again from the 5th floor. So where did I put the 5th floor? So there you see the 5th floor, the 5th floor shared space in there. So you have a bank of kitchen equipment around a dining table and a seating area, as well as a breakfast bar type area, which obviously can be utilised in any number of ways. I've also provided in this update, I'm hoping, so there's the 7th floor, and again you can see a different layout for kitchen dining space there, as well as access onto a roof terrace here on the 7th floor. And then just to be comprehensive, there is the 11th floor, the panorama. So this upper recess space is entirely communal space. As you can see again, within this area, a kitchen dining space, but also a large lounge area and an area dedicated as a games room there, and obviously equipped and managed on that basis. So when you put all those spaces mixed amongst it, you have several hundred square metres of communal space to serve those 76 rooms.
Thank you, that's really useful. Is the kitchen equipment going to be provided in those communal areas? I know it's not a planning matter, but it's very important for seeing how it's going to work.
So,
well, the applicant says yes.
Well, if I can
sorry, Mr.
elaborate on that. So yes, there is some, so certainly the white goods type stuff is all provided as you'd expect, but there is some equipment as well. We have imposed a condition requiring a management plan. They've given a sight of what they're intending already, but to be totally blunt, this would be a place and officers are bringing this with a recommendation to grant approval, so we are satisfied it meets your policy for the quality of standard living accommodation, but only if it's managed well. If it isn't managed well, it would be, you'd have 76 people living in substandard flats and no-go zones on every other floor. So it does require good management. So we had a lot of debate as officers about how far we as a planning authority should interfere in the day-to-day business as usual of a landlord. But because this is not licensable by your private sector housing team, that doesn't have, because of the legal definitions, it doesn't have that degree of control. So exceptionally, we do feel we do need to impose that control to achieve that standard of living. So those issues of, exactly how is that kitchen going to be managed, how is visitor access going to be managed, so on and so forth, we as the planning authority, you as the planning authority, will formally discharge under a planning condition that's imposed in the recommendation.
Good, I think that's great.
Councillor Smith.
Sorry, Chair, I think I've got my answers really now, but I've seen this in London anyway, but when we were talking originally and I hadn't seen that plan, and you're saying all at common areas, I was thinking they're going to have access to all the common areas, but they're only going to have access to those, according to, it was saying using those particular dining rooms, they'll only use those dining rooms on those floors.
To be absolutely clear, all communal areas are available to all residents. That is the standard model here.
Right.
What this and it's an illustration, is to ensure that there is adequate space in proximity to, you don't want to carry your cooking stuff, 5 floors up, that you could choose to do so. And that's the point. So it is, what they've done is work out where to put them and what size to make them based on a distribution here. But you can see from this somewhat complicated, it's not on here anymore, this somewhat complicated diagram, if you look at that 7th floor, which is one I showed you, which obviously has an outdoor terrace, so it's a particularly attractive place. They do anticipate that people from the 7th floor and the 8th floor and the 6th floor will likely go to that kitchen diner space, to enjoy it. But they don't particularly anticipate someone will walk all the way up from the 1st floor, albeit they can do should they wish.
Just a follow-up question. So there's no suiting of doors and things to stop people on different floors using those rooms?
That hasn't been included in the management plan we looked at, but again, that's the sort of detail we want to make sure we have a good handle on in that condition.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask about the environmental standards for the building and sustainability. Is that coming back as part of the later application, or is it meant to be considered now?
No, the sustainable standards are part of this scheme. The only thing that's coming back as a reserved matter is landscaping. So obviously the overall design and appearance issues that will go to those BREEAM standards form part of this. And again, we're satisfied that the applicant has adequately accommodated that within the scheme and the approved drawings that they've submitted.
All right, and then as part of the management plan, are we looking at the strength of the doors, the locks, the crime prevention issues, the way the people move around the building with CCTV internally, this sort of thing? Is that part of the management plan?
Very much so. Whether we'd be looking at door strength, which is largely covered by building regulation, but certainly access, accessible permissions, that mechanicalised locks on the main entrance and the cycle store, and how others may enter the building and who is allowed from a management point of view to enter the building, and those CCTV issues in communal areas and so on, and external to the building, would all form part of the management plan.
All right, then, we're going to go to comments, and I'll be interested to hear what you say. But I'm going to move the officer's report and the recommendation with the conditions. I think that this offers a flexibility of accommodation, particularly in that location, with all the innovation around engineering, the maritime industry, the Navy, and all these other things. I think this is going to provide some flexibility and choice for employers. So I'll move the officer's report with the conditions. We've heard a lot about those already. And Councillor Smith, you got some experience of this in London, I think.
No, it's just a question. Is it going to be, I know it's going to be managed as well, and I've seen it working on it. Is there going to be a reception? I didn't pick that up on the, is there going to be a reception?
If I may say, apologies, and I won't put the, so there is no reception desk in the layout shown, but there's a sort of seating area around there. As part of the management plan, again, they do talk to an on-site 35 hours a week. I think he wasn't doing that from memory, apologies, manager, but I don't believe they sort of sit behind a desk in a concierge or receptionist sense. They have a more floating community engagement approach that goes to obviously the co-living logic.
Councillor Symes.
I'd like to second your proposal, and I think these are such a great idea. We've been looking at ways of bringing professional people into the city without, the normal HMO complaints every time it's in a shared street. And I think this is an ideal way for young people who can't afford that first flat or first house to actually live in a professional setting and benefit from having great accommodation. So,
Councillor Norton.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I do think these are, on balance, and I will say on balance, a good idea. It does frustrate me slightly when you have things like, cohabiting seen as being a beacon for good mental health when the rooms are built knowingly smaller than the recommended size standard. That bothers me slightly. If somebody is ill, for instance, or for whatever reason they're going to be in a substandard room, but that's the choice of the tenant, I guess. On all, I think they are, sound very good. I like the idea of the gym and and lots of the things that are there. I just worry it's with regret. I will vote for this, but it is with regret that those rooms aren't of adequate standard. I think size standard.
All right. Well, I'll move from my little cottage. Oh, Councillor, I just come back on that. I'll move from my little cottage. I'm not disagreeing with you, Councillor Norton, at all. I'll move from my little cottage in Napier Road, which was probably smaller than these rooms, to a much bigger house, and I'm quite certain I know which one drives me more, I have more difficulty with, which is the larger one. Councillor Stagg.
Thank you. I just want to say, I think this is really exciting. I think it fills a gap, and there's a niche there that isn't catered for. And coming back to the mental health bit, the fact, if you're coming new to a city, you don't know anybody, you move in there, you've got 75 other people, and the ability to move around, sort of between the floors, etc. I think it's really good as a starting point for people. They can then go on from there, presumably, maybe 2 or 3 of them might get together and get a flat later on. I think it's really great because it's not there. There's nothing like that there. And we want to attract, for example, more teachers into the city and to come in and actually have a ready-made place with potential friends all around is a really good idea, as long as it is a good standard. And the one thing that worries me as well is I hope it looks nice on the outside, not just on the inside, because it is next door to the historic dockyard, and I don't want to see anything like that horrible building behind the station, the green and yellow one down there. So I want something that's really nice, because I think that's like a dying caterpillar. So as long as it can be really good outside as well, thank you. But I think it's really brilliant.
Well, all right, then that's all the comments over, I think. So we move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. So look, Mr. Vale, that's all of us. However, Kieran's going. So, got a big responsibility, sir. You tell your people that we're going to accept this form of accommodation now. So we'll be very interested to see it, see what the management plan is. So hopefully they get on with it and not let the city down. Thank you very much. All right, now the one that we've all been waiting for.
Chair.
Yeah, sorry. Where am I? Yeah, Councillor Atwell, you're off now. Thank you for your time this morning. Welcome, Councillor Vernon Jackson, the leader of the council. Have you got any interest to declare? Thank you, Councillor Vernon Jackson. All right. Okay, so we're going to go on now to up to Cosham. We're going to pop from Charles Dickens to Cosham, and we're going to look at this one, number 6, which is a workshop and offices on Northern Road, construction of a fire station with offices, a training tower, training facilities and associated car parking and landscaping following demolition of the existing buildings. This is our land, just for interest. All right? Who's introducing it?
Thank you, sir. It's a fire station. There's little more to say, in truth. So, clearing up the old PCMI site and building a new purpose-built fire station. Just a couple of things to flag with you. Two vehicular accesses. One, if I can get this to work, one from Sundridge Close here at the top, going across the adjacent land, and the access for the fire appliances coming directly out onto A3. The building is, you know the site, I'm sure, that site up by the roundabout in Cosham, a few images there. What we have as an overall layout, say the parking area for users to the north, obviously a controlled private space. The fire station itself in the centre of the building, that fire appliance access directly to the larger road to the south-east, and the yard, including the training tower, to the south-west, is predominantly 2 to 3 story building laid out to meet the needs of the modern fire service. Looks like that, give or take. The ground floor contains, I'm not sure that is the ground floor, it's not actually. Yeah, someone's been fiddling with these. No, that is the ground floor, sorry. So the ground floor contains a community room on the front here, which obviously has some wider community benefit, and then the operational spaces, appliance bays, so on and so forth. And on the first floor, operational office space and the domicile spaces for fire personnel on that second floor. They're looking at PVs on the roof to achieve a BREEAM 2018 excellent rating overall, and all the odds and sods that go along with that. That's probably all that I need to present to you. As I say, it's a fire station. It's fairly straightforward. I will draw your attention to the SMAT, some tweaks to the conditions that consultees and others have requested. Condition 3, the Highway Authority has sought some amendments to that. I will be suggesting some further amendments to it, because I don't think it adequately captures the requirement to deliver that access from Sundridge Close, because obviously if we are clearly limiting the access directly to the A3 only to emergency liveried vehicles, then we will require that other access to be delivered so that others can get to the site. So I will be, through the delegated authority of the recommendation, seeking authority just to tweak that to include the requirement of the delivery of the Sundridge Close access and its retention, obviously thereafter, prior to occupation. Obviously that's also going to form part of the construction routing for the construction of the site as well, which will be covered by the existing SEMP condition on there. Other condition tweaks and changes are included in the SMAT as well, which I think are all relatively self-explanatory. Other than that, Chairman, happy to take any questions.
Very good. So we've got Ms Parker.
Chairman, before we go, can I just check? My understanding is this is currently Portsmouth City Council land, and that the land where the current fire station is will be transferred to the City Council. As leader of the council, and the property portfolio sits with me, Kieran, am I allowed to take part in this or not? I'm not sure I can think there's a conflict, but it's always better to be careful.
Provided, and I'm sure you do understand, that obviously the land ownership in any commercial deal is not a material planning consideration. I don't see that being a problem.
Okay, thanks, Kieran.
All right, thank you for that clarity, Councillor Vernon-Jackson. Mr Parker.
Hello, Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm here in support of the planning application before you for the new Cosham Fire Station on the old Portsmouth Craft and Manufacturing Industry PCMI site. My name is Tony Parker. I'm the Senior Construction Project Manager for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service. And I have with me today Station Commander Lee Sheen from the current Cosham Fire Station, Dave Cottrell from Morgan Sindall, our contractor for our station investment programme, and Ben Christian, our planning consultant for Vale Williams. We're here today seeking your support to replace the existing fire station in Cosham with a brand new state-of-the-art facility. The existing station is cramped and was built more than 70 years ago, and firefighting has evolved quite significantly since this date. Our vehicles are now larger, we've got more modern equipment, we've got an increased training need, and the risk of contamination from fires has increased, and our workforce is now a lot more diverse. The new station will fit with our service vision of a modern, fit-for-purpose estate by providing direct access onto the strategic road network for our emergency response, more dynamic training facilities, accessible community space to engage directly with the community and support fire safety messaging, improved energy efficiency by attaining BREEAM Excellent, but also helping to meet the service's carbon reduction target, separate decontamination zones. The design is focused on the mental health and well-being of our frontline workers. We have inclusive facilities that will attract and retain our more diverse workforce, and a secure perimeter with fencing, as well as maintaining the parkland landscaping and trees to the boundaries. The new fire station has been a truly collaborative effort. We've engaged with all the Cosham firefighters in many design meetings, as well as our learning and development team at headquarters. We've had a 2-day public consultation event with positive feedback from over 300 of the public, and we've had ongoing discussions with the adjacent schemes at Edinburgh House and the NHS on Highclere for the collective benefit of the community of Cosham. PCC Highways team have also been involved, and we've spoken with them about a safe exit of emergency response vehicles onto Northern Road. We've integrated with their South East Hampshire Rapid Transit scheme, which is going to be adjacent, and the main entrance and exit for all non-emergency response vehicles is via Sundridge Close at their request. The Edinburgh House development has agreed to this solution, and within our boundary they gain a much needed turning circle for refuse collection and site accommodation during their construction phases. Our sustainability team has also influenced this project with a fabric-first design. With improved insulation and airtightness, we have green energy on site with PV panels and battery storage, and we'll be using air source heat pumps to provide the heating utilising the above resource. Sustainable transport scheme is linked with a new transit scheme with PCC, and we've included extra facilities on our station, and we've also included infrastructure to support an increase in electric vehicles for our service fleet. A planning decision was anticipated on the 2nd of February, and a decision in our favour today would enable the existing PCMI buildings to be demolished as soon as possible. This is currently causing some significant issues and risks to PCC, the public, and us as an emergency responder due to the recent incidents of break-ins, vandalism and arson, most recent one being last night. Our delivery programme would see a brand new fire station open and operational by the end of 2023. This is especially important due to the condition of our existing site. Finally, your approval today would help to make life safer now and in the future for the ward of Cosham, the wider city of Portsmouth and the surrounding boroughs, for people working in the facility, and all of those requiring our assistance at an hour of need. We hope that you see this landmark community fire station as an exciting scheme to be delivered in Portsmouth. In light of your officer's recommendations for approval and the positive addition this new fire station will make to Portsmouth, we respectfully request that the application be approved. Thank you for your time.
Right, and just for accuracy, it's the border of Cosham and Wimmering. Wimmering people would like you to be reminded of that, I have no doubt. Members, questions? Any questions? No? Good. I'd like to say this is a very welcome application. You know, it's an investment. It's more about economic regeneration too for, as you say, Cosham, Wimmerings and the north of the city. Very welcome. And I asked questions in the pre-agenda about the trees. We know that I think there's a couple of trees are going to go, but they're going to be replaced as part of the plan. And indeed, in fact, the PCMI was where they used to send us to do our training for planning. Yes, to send us, trundle us all the way up there. I think it was just an excuse to justify the existence of the buildings. They used to send us up these cold, horrible classrooms up there, and now we're going to see them demolished and put to the land put to better use, and Cosham and the city benefiting more widely. So yeah, we appreciate you have a much more diverse workforce. We understand that, and we understand the investment that's going in for those purposes. I can't think of much more to say. That this is welcome, and so I've got Councillor New and then Councillor Vernon-Jackson.
Thank you, Chair, and I echo many of the comments you've just made. I too also remember going to PCMI Science to do some training, and Yeah, absolutely. Memories long forgotten but recently resurfaced. No, I think this is very welcome, and also I'd just like to place on record my thanks as well to the Fire Authority and the applicant here today, because actually I thought the public consultation on this was superb. I thought that they went really above and beyond to take people on a journey and a tour with them as well, and certainly I found it very helpful and useful. But more so, seeing this area in Cosham on the spur roundabout being regenerated, especially for the Fire Authority, as they've said, times have changed, they have a more diverse need now, and so I think it's wholly welcome, so I'd be happy to second this for you.
All right. Councillor Vernon Jackson.
Thanks. I think it's a very sensible application. It means that we've got a fire station in the north of the city that is there for the next 50, 60 years and providing good service. I think it's excellent. I'm pleased, as I understand it, there may be a police presence there as well, and that again will be good. And it seems to me that it's been well thought through, the way in which we're not getting vehicular access except for the emergency vehicles onto the main road is sensible. It's good that they're doing BREEAM excellent. So overall, I think it's very sensible, and I'm sure we shall all be supporting it.
Yeah, Councillor Norton.
Yeah, absolutely. Same again. I mean, it is with a heavy heart because I grew up around Cosham Fire Station. My father was an officer there for a long, long time. I remember visiting there for various kind of days, family days and things like that. So it is with a heavy heart that we see the old building go. But like the recently built PIC in the city, I think it's great that we have, you know, good new modern facilities for our firefighters to work in, good working conditions, and therefore I think it's it has my full support, and I look forward to seeing it in action. It would be great if we could visit it when it's up and running as councillors.
Indeed, and indeed utilising a lot of green technology to service the this brand new state-of-the-art fire station. So this is going to be unanimous, isn't it? Should we move to the vote then? I proposed it, Councillor New has seconded it. All those in favour, please show. All right, gents, and we'd like you to extend an invitation to us in due course to come and have a look at it. All right?
We certainly will, yeah.
Much obliged to you. Thank you. Thank you for your time this morning as well. So, we'll move on to number 7, the one I previously mentioned before, which again is Cosham stroke Wimmering. Who's doing this one? I can't remember. Simons. Mr. Turner's doing this one.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an application at the Clock House, so-called site on Spur Road in Cosham. It's an outline application for a student hall of residence comprising 44 study studios in a building of between 2 to 7 stories in height. Next slide, please. Thank you. There's the extent of the site, red-edged, the smaller Clock House building there in the middle. Next slide, please. Thank you. Aerial photograph there. So it's a single-storey building situated in the middle of the site, previously used for car sales, window sales and conservatories, that sort of thing. It's got a little porter cabin there in the southeast corner, all tarmacked, as you can notice. It has a vehicular access point in the southwest corner, which is problematic because of the cars coming downhill at speed off Spur Road in the roundabout. But the highways officer, given that it's an existing access and a low proposed vehicle use of the site, is not problematic or not objectionable. And in front of the site, curving around, you can see the pedestrian subway going down and underneath Northern Road, and there's another one across Southampton Road. Alternatively, on Spur Road, you can just see a zebra crossing that takes you to the north. So we're on the edge of Cosham local centre, with the railway station down to the south east and the local centre. Nearest surrounding buildings, we've got a design and print studio to the east there, with we think an office above. And then to the south, we've got a chiropodist and various other commercial uses. There may be some first floor residential above some of the commercial uses in the area. And in the rear southeast corner, bottom right corner of that aerial photograph, you can see the rear extreme corner of the Tesco building. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the view from the front, just perhaps a bit more of a familiar view there. Again, the same distribution of commercial uses, particularly around the site. In terms of the development, well, moving on perhaps to the next slide, the last photograph that just shows the site access there. So that's looking north. You can just make out the Clock House building there with the roof and the signage. So it's a, it's a tarmac site with a single-storey building, and that is the access point with the drop curb. You can see the pedestrian subway going down and underneath, and then the Chiropodist on the right-hand side. Moving on to the next slide. This is the site layout. So although an outline application, it is most details are in at this stage. We have access to be determined and layout, scale and appearance, and it's only landscape that is reserved, but you can nevertheless see a good indication of the sort of landscaping and space for the landscaping proposed. So the building sits in the middle of the site there, cranked at its front to reflect the curved nature of the frontage. On the western side you have a waste recycling area there, which gets access off to the left there, across the pavement and so on to the nearest access point. And to the eastern side, we've got the vehicle access you can see there in dark green, which takes you into the site. The front door is on the front, leading through to the range of rooms, individual student rooms, and there's a communal room on each floor, marked in blue there on the eastern side, on the on the right-hand side, and then at the back, private gardens for the students, and indeed landscaping to the front, hard and soft landscaping. Next slide, please. This is the semi-basement, because the site slopes down from north to south, so it's 6 stories at the front, and the 7th story is the semi-basement at the back. As you can see, there are 2 student bedrooms. They look, given the sloping land, they look out over the rear garden there, but otherwise the basement, semi-basement, is given over to extensive bicycle parking. You can also see the full layout of the access arrangements there, 2 parking bays, 1 outside, 1 inside, and clearly a turning space there, so you can enter in a forward gear and leave the site in a forward gear as well, if that's properly managed. And members may have noticed all the management arrangements in place via a condition for this drop-off at the start and end of term to make sure that's properly phased and managed on any student site, but in particular on this busy location. Next slide, please. First floor, which is indicative of the sorts of arrangements we've got. Different size rooms spread across each floor with communal areas. Each floor is different or largely different. The rooms range in size from around about 13 square metres right up to some pretty big ones on the left-hand side there, excuse me, at 35 square metres. So lucky whoever gets that room. And the communal room, all of them exceed your space standards as set out in the report. The next slide is one of the upper stories, again a range of rooms and communal area. There are some flat roofs you'll see in a minute on the elevations. The applicants confirm they're not to be accessed for amenity purposes, so there's no need for barriers and that sort of thing around the edges of those flat roofed areas. They may be used for photovoltaic power instead. And another floor area there on the 5th floor as it happens. Moving down to the elevations, this is a rather flat 2D elevation. You'll see a visual in a moment that gives it better a feeling for you, but you can nevertheless make out how the building steps up from the 2 stories on either side, reflecting the sort of scale of the surrounding buildings, stepping up to 6 at the front there, 7 when you read it from the back. Again, the back is an unfortunate view. It doesn't do it justice because of the 2D image. So there's a response there to the local environment stepping up and providing a landmark and hopefully interesting building at its highest point. The next visual is one of the visual 3D type images to give you a better feel for the form. Don't worry about too much about the colours necessarily. The main facing material will be brick or bricks, possibly more than one detail. We've had some quite appropriate samples provided, but that will be part of the full range of conditions, all the architectural details and materials to be determined. But you start to get a feel for the form of the building, albeit from the air. And the next slide is perhaps a better, more representative image showing that from across the roundabout. So again, you get a feel for the building. They're curving at the front with different elements, step forward and back, and stepping up, different treatments, different windows. And then in the centre, you've got the vertical row or vertical column of windows marking the stairs and lift core, with the yellow outlined feature around the entrance, just helping to define visually and practically the front door and the central point of the building. And some architectural details in plans suggesting the sorts of details of soffits, window reveals, and so on. In terms of the any other environmental details, the report sets out the range of issues we're addressing: biodiversity, waste, the student control, and so on, management. Just one public comment, just asking about the construction period and how that would affect nearby businesses. So that is dealt with by the usual construction management condition. We do need to hear back from Natural England with respect to putting to bed the nitrates and bird disturbance, recreational bird disturbance matters, which are common to overnight stay applications. You remember from last time the update with respect to Natural England and the calculator. So that needs to be done before consent is granted, if that's your wish today. And then the legal agreement securing matters such as the management of the site. On that point, recommendation 2 just needs to be expanded as per the SMAT, the Supplementary Matters Report, just to clarify the matters of site security and management are tied up in that agreement. And then secondly, an extra condition is proposed for boundary treatment. We missed that off in the published version. That's important, obviously, for site appearance and security, and for the building itself as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Chairman, before we get it, just apologies, there's something wrong with the plugs today, so we've just lost power to the presenting laptop, so I'll see if I can find a plug that works, but if members wish to see images, you can't. Thank you.
Yep, thanks. I'm glad we got it all in beforehand. So we're going to go to questions. Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair. I know in the report that there is obviously a concern from Southern Water. This area is obviously, as the officers just spoke about, there are concerns about flooding, but what mitigations will the developer be able to actually take to prevent this? And the reason why I talk on this, Chair, is because I'm sure most people who know the area will know, even like the underpass that's there directly in front of the clock house, I think without fail annually floods, and it's like a swimming pool. But then when you compound that with the other issues that have been experienced in this same area, especially around Salisbury Road and the bottom of Cosham High Street, where the surface water issues have been ongoing, and Southern Water are now working on a solution to that, but it's still some way off from being completed, how this won't actually exacerbate the situation and further compound the flooding issues here.
Through you, Chairman.
Go ahead, Simon.
Thank you, Councillor. The matter has been looked at by the relevant consultees, and we've got a drainage condition attached, so that's the simple answer. It's slightly more detailed. The site, of course, is tarmacked. It's all hard surfacing at the moment, so it probably has a high rate of runoff, as you've mentioned. So it can only be beneficial at the moment to have a new development in with proper control and proper attenuation, landscaping and other methods to slow off the surface and sewer drainage. So it should be a better site from the point of view of water management than this is now.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back on that? Thank you for that. I do appreciate that. But the problem is not necessarily with the ground and the direct runoff. That's just the cause. It's actually with the sewer capacity. So, and I think the problem with these representations from Southern Water, and I know Portsmouth Water hasn't provided any, but it's more Southern Water's issue, is they haven't fixed the roof, so to speak, you know, when it won't rain in. And they're now, in my opinion, doing the bare minimum to resolve the issue that's at hand with the current capacity from residents. So they can't stop people building stuff from connecting into the sewage system, but it does present us potentially with a problem that is here and now, if that makes sense. So are we saying that we basically can't consider anything beyond what's kind of written there? Because this is a lot of reading between the lines, but because of the scale of this development, it does concern me about the impact that it will have on the already existing problems there. And like I say, some water have not yet resolved those problems.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry for misunderstanding if I did. So, I mean, Southern Water, for example, have looked at the site itself, the current condition, and then what the proposals are. So, you know, they have concluded that with a condition, you know, that they've not objected is the simple answer. So, again, that condition 10 will look at it in much more detail. How sewage and surface water, the whole shebang in terms of drainage, can be managed at that site. But the long and short of it is they've looked at it and have not objected.
Sorry, Chair, if I could just have one more question just to the officer, just for clarification. And my understanding is, though, and I appreciate that, is that they kind of really can't object because they can't stop developers or us from actually connecting a new development into the sewage system. So would that perhaps be the grounds of why no objections are actually received? Because it kind of sounds a bit like everyone's got their hands behind their backs, if that makes sense. So it's just so that I think that we can have full transparency on this issue that is affecting this area.
Chairman, if I can perhaps assist, like a lot of things in planning, basically it's not planning. So the Wastewater Management Act deals with how the statutory undertakers for water engage with developers. So yes, it's not a matter for planning, hence you're quite right, they don't object. They are required to provide connections, but they're also entitled to, as we all know, levy charges to people that want connections and want services. So it is a very fair and understandable criticism. It is one that they must resolve through their legislation. So they are required to provide those connections and adequate sewerage capacity for those that connect. How they then arrange that is for them as a statutory undertaker, not for you as a statutory local planning authority.
Thank you very much for that. Those questions is something we're going to have to come back to time and time again as we attempt to bring in all the new housing that we're required to do. Councillor Norton, then Councillor Smythe.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not entirely convinced that I'm secure on the answer there, really. Surely one of the things that we are asked to consider is the impact on the environment. Now, Councillor New has raised that there is potentially a damaging impact on the environment if the sewers there were to flood and the drains were to overflow and what have you. But we constantly get told it's not a consideration, it's not a material consideration. So I guess the question again is, can we refuse this over concerns over the environment connected to the sewage network there?
Chair, through you, so the same answer, no, is the short answer. That is, like a lot of things, material considerations. One of the things that are not material are those that are managed by separate legislation. There is separate legislation that deals with how developers undertake a lot of aspects of development, building control, of course, being the largest area of overlap, but connections to the sewage system and the capacity of the sewage system from a development management point of view is dealt with by the Wastewater Management Act. Obviously, your local plan, when it looks at growth and how to allocate those spaces, liaises with those statutory undertakers to see how that broader city-wide infrastructure is provided and funded and supported. But on a case-by-case basis, there is very clear guidance that is managed by separate legislation, and it is for the developer and the undertaker who has the statutory responsibility to resolve that matter.
Councillor Smythe.
I just had a question which may not be directly a planning matter but is in my mind, which is, this is student accommodation. I think we've all in this committee felt that there's probably too much student accommodation in the south of the city. But is this aimed at university students or at students in Highbury or students in connection with the hospital?
Thank you, Councillor. It is aimed at student nurses on NHS apprentices just over the road at the hospital, hence the location.
All right, we've done that then. So, Councillor Stagg, beg your pardon, sorry, you're just slightly out of my vision, beg your pardon.
I'm out of favour with you today, aren't I? In paragraph 5539, it says that he's also noted that the roof could incorporate solar panels. Shouldn't that be the roof should or must incorporate solar panels? Should at the very least, but must, I think, should be de rigueur.
Thank you, Councillor. At the end of the day, it's the applicant's choice as to how they achieve the level of sustainability that our Condition 19 seeks. It will depend on the practicalities. I'm no expert in photovoltaic panels, but it will depend on the physical characteristics of the building with roofs at different levels and so on. I would hope and expect that would be part of the package, but ultimately they will decide what range of measures contribute towards achieving a certain sustainability rating. So I think it would be perhaps difficult to insist upon them doing it, but if they need to do it, they will, if they will and can do it as part of their package. And we retain control over that, Councillor, with the condition.
I think that's ignoring the current issues we have and the ongoing issues we have. I mean, we all know about the increase in energy prices. We're encouraging more people to have electric cars. Where the hell is the electricity coming from? Some of it has got to be generated within the buildings that are being put up. And surely this could be a condition.
To assist, Chair, through you, a simple fact, again, it's a simple matter of policy. You do not have a policy that requires every building to have photovoltaic panels.
Well, isn't it time we did?
That's something you can discuss in your local plan. I certainly won't be encouraging you to do so. There's lots of different ways of microgeneration. And it may be that, as Mr Turner just explained, that some sites aren't appropriate for photovoltaic electricity generation, and others would be small-scale wind or other heat transfer pumps, etc. And it will be on a case-by-case basis. You can certainly set a policy, not today, but in your local plan for a percentage of energy to be generated by microgeneration as part of the broader sustainability goals. But again, you can't imply policy on a case-by-case basis.
Can I ask then, I mean, I know this is not material to this particular application, but that we actually set up a policy ASAP to make sure that this goes into most buildings, because apart from, I mean, with solar panels, all you need is a slight gradient. You don't, a flat roof, you can make it just slightly sloping. So there's no reason I don't see why solar panels can't go in. I can appreciate with heat pumps, etc. We're not in the best location anyway, being in the Hampshire Basin, we're on the edge of it, so we don't get much heat coming through. But can we please set up some group or whatever to establish a policy? Because I think this is absolutely urgent.
Well, the emerging city plan is a place to make that representation into, see if we can get a policy there. The leader of the council is here. He has heard what you've said. I have heard what you've said, and we also listened to the planning officer's recommendation. Not every case will be appropriate. One thing I think that we can do, can't we, Mr Maguire, is the committee can seek to discharge the Condition 19 itself if it wants to, may it not?
So under the Constitution, any member can ask for any item to come back to it. I think as and when that item comes back for decision if a member, having seen what they are proposing to submit to discharge their sustainable construction requirements, feels that's something the committee needs to comment on, then of course they can bring it to committee in accordance with the scheme of delegation.
Would that help you, Councillor Stagg, that we bring that condition back to see what they're actually intending to do?
Yes, I'm just worried that, you know, I know this is only outline planning permission, but that stuff goes ahead and it's too late because it's already then set in stone that you can't do anything about it. So I think the earlier you sort of establish some conditions like this, the better.
All right. So do you want to bring that condition back to the committee in order to see how it
I
how it's
would like to,
discharged?
yes, please. I don't know if anybody else supports me on that.
If I may, Chair, as I say, as and when that application is submitted, then members individually
this is an
can make
outline
that conclusion.
Indeed.
Yeah, yes,
We're going
I
to see it
appreciate
again.
that. Yes,
We will
thank
see it
you.
again. All right. So
Chair, particularly if we could tell the applicant why we're so fussed about it, because this is the ideal opportunity to have, even if it's excess to the BREEAM standards that they've got, they can make a contribution back into the...
I've no doubt that officers will tell them about the discussion here this morning. All right then. So some very important issues have been raised this morning. We've all seen the water coming down the hill. We know about that. And it's referenced in the report in some fair detail, actually, about how they're going to manage this situation. Mr. Maguire has explained to us what will happen and what we may or may not do. So on those grounds, I'm going to move the recommendation. Do I have a second?
Chair, if we do that, do you want to bolt on another resolution to the officer's report to bring back condition 19 for discharge?
Yes, indeed. That seemed to be the view of the committee, Mr. Maguire. All right. So
If I may, Chair, so my recommendation to the committee is to not do that, for members to look at that submission when it is made and decide whether you are satisfied with it. Clearly, you can seek to do that out with the scheme of delegation and the Council's constitution by resolution today. I will have to look at what processes we will then need to put in place for a future set of planners, because this obviously could come in at any point over the next several years. So a mechanism so that we can capture it will be extremely difficult. So I'll give you my apologies now when that isn't picked up in 2 years' time when they come back in for it. But on that basis, I would say it would be far better for members to have a look at what is made when it is made and whether at that time, under that policy, members are satisfied they still want it to come to committee and use committee time rather than attempting to prejudge that matter today for that purpose. But as always, it is your decision.
Right. Not the one that you want us to make, though, but I understand. I really understand. So it's kind of, you know, we're looking too far into the future is what he's saying. Let it come back again and see what happens. That's what he's saying. What do you think, Councillor Stagg? It's up to you. I'm not fussed either way.
Well, I think we've got a climate emergency, haven't we? And I think we signed up to it. And this is part of it. So I don't know if we've got time to hang around for 2 years or whatever. We need
But
to
we're talking about this specific condition.
Yeah, I know. But this is part of something bigger, isn't it? And it should be across the whole city, not just on individual schemes.
Yeah, well, the government's made some very important announcements recently.
Well, last time we actually
did.
did our
It
bit.
is too late, I quite agree, but the government has made those announcements recently over these sorts of things. So I don't doubt that there are going to be changes to the national planning policy framework that are going to impact us positively. So I'm going to move the recommendation then, and Kieran, do we want to put this additional condition in that number 19 comes back? Well, all right, but it's got to be
Well, I
voted.
do.
Well, so we're going to have to put that to the vote. Am I doing this correctly now? There's a proposition on the floor to grant planning permission, because I'm proposing it, but with the condition 19 to come back to us, Kieran. Have I phrased it accurately or not?
So you're proposing to move the officer's report, but with an additional, I suppose, limit on delegation on condition 19 to bring
Yes.
that back to committee?
Yes, so the four
discharge.
recommendations together with the conditions, but bringing 19 back. We're going to see it. We're going to see it in the near future anyway.
And do we
when
need
it
a
comes.
seconder?
Right. Is there a seconder?
It has to say something like, because of our concern about solar power.
And the flooding.
Well, we can't talk about the flooding. We've been given that information this morning. We can't put on a condition like that because we've been told that we can't do that. I think we're getting ourselves into a muddle now.
Ian, could you, I mean, obviously the condition 19 is driving the developer at achieving a BREEAM excellent standard. Perhaps the committee could benefit from a sort of roundabout explanation of how that impacts on potential for renewable generation on site and any relevance it has to flooding.
The second answer is a lot easier, not a lot of relevance to flooding. Obviously, there is broader requirements for sustainable drainage, and as I mentioned, the actual connection for fresh and grey water is obviously managed by the Water Management Act. The BREEAM Excellent Standard is a industry standard for sustainable construction, so it deals with fabric efficiency as well as the future occupation and management, including things like microgeneration, as well as not just for electricity, but obviously for heat. So it deals with managing the energy during construction and as a final product, and part of that is obviously the future generation or not of on-site electricity, future generation or not of on-site heat and recycling of those things. It is a code that uses a scoring system, so you can focus more of the development funding on certain aspects and less on other aspects to achieve an overall excellent rating, which will be bespoke to the specific circumstances of the build, the nature of the occupancy, so on and so forth, because obviously there's different things you can manage in different ways depending on what different buildings are occurring. A single occupancy dwelling house, for example, has a very different way of being managed compared to a block of student accommodation, and consequently they'll have very different responses to how they want to achieve sustainable construction as its broader context.
But this is a particularly good site, Chair, for the solar panel, the way the building is
Yeah,
developed.
I think the argument is not that it may well meet the energy standards of this particular building, but it's over and above the building, the wider community benefit of having solar panels and using every opportunity to produce energy in a green way. I think that's what is under discussion here. But anyway, so I've made a proposition. I want to get on now. I'm not going to get stuck on this for hours. Together with this condition coming back. So all those in favour, please show. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against. 1, 2, 3. All right. So the outline permission is granted with the condition coming back. All right. Move on then to 63 Dorking Crescent. This is C3 to a C4 for up to 6 people. Simon, I guess? Ian.
Oh, and apologies, members, you won't have a presentation for this, but luckily the case officer has provided pretty much all the relevant plans within your agenda, so I don't see that being too much of a problem. Another change of use. This is a straight change of use from an existing dwelling house in single household occupancy, C3, to a C4 dwelling for 6 people. You can see the floor plans on page 105, paragraph 110 of the agenda. Again, not an unusual layout, one you've seen many times before. 2 bedrooms on each floor, all en suite, a shared living dining room, and again in this site a small extra living space tucked into the front. This is not a, if you will, standard terrace house for Portsmouth, what you've seen scores of times before. This is a detached dwelling in a lower density area, but obviously the overall policy position remains exactly the same. At paragraph 5.4 of the report, you can see the mix of HMO dwellings, again with the same challenges of the quality of the mapping you can see in there. There are 35 properties identified within the catchment area, and the addition of this as an HMO brings us up to 5.7%, because there's one other HMO in this broad area, so a much lower density than we looked at on the early part of the agenda. As I say, the layout is considered to be satisfactory, and as a detached building with a much larger plot than we often see for HMOs, has uniquely the opportunity for 3 parking spaces on the site, which are obviously above and beyond your parking standards in this case. The floor areas are laid out in paragraph 510 and illustrated, as I say, in paragraph 110 in plan form, and it fully meets the obligations of your policies and is therefore recommended for the grant of plan permission.
Thank you, members. Any questions? Right, move to comment. I'll move the officer's report with the conditional permission. Any comments? Is there a seconder or not? Councillor Vernon Jackson, thank you. So we have the proposition there. There's nobody wanting to make any further comment. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. That's it, I think, today. Thank you all very much, every one of you. Some interesting points coming up. Thank you for your time, as I say, and to the officers for preparing the reports and everybody else involved in the meeting today.
Thank you, Chair.